Mr. Secretary General, European leaders seem worried after Donald Trump's statements, and there is talk of strategic autonomy again, maybe even a completely different nuclear capacity. Are you worried that Mr. Trump's statements will signal the beginning of the end of NATO and the beginning of something else in Europe?
So I welcome that European allies are investing more in defense, and NATO has called for that for many, many years. And NATO has also called for European allies to invest more in high-end capabilities, more forces, higher readiness, and now European allies are delivering that. That's a good thing. But that's not an alternative to NATO. That is actually a way to strengthen NATO. And we should not pursue any path that indicates that we are trying to divide Europe from North America. The strength is that we have Europe and North America together in NATO. We have to remember that non-EU NATO allies account for 80% of NATO's defense spending. And this is not only about resources, but also about geography. If you look to the south, you have Turkey, a non-EU ally, but important for the southern flank. In the north, you have countries like Norway and Iceland, perhaps not the biggest military powers, but still extremely critical for the transatlantic link, for the protection of the link between North America and Europe. And then in the west, you have the United States, Canada, but also United Kingdom. So the strength of NATO is that we bring Europe and North America together. Together we have 50% of the world's economic might, 50% of the world's military might. So as long as we stand together, we are able to send a message to any adversary that we are able to protect all allies. On nuclear, let me just say that NATO has a nuclear deterrent, and this has worked for decades. And this is the ultimate deterrence we have. And we should, of course, always continue to ensure that this nuclear deterrent of NATO remains safe, secure and effective. And we have agreed procedures for command and control, doctrines, and this is actually a joint effort by the United States and European allies, the NATO nuclear deterrent. We should not do anything to undermine that. That will only create more uncertainty and more room for miscalculation and misunderstanding. So we should be committed to the NATO nuclear deterrent and not do anything to undermine that.
Last question, Sir Carlo, in front of me here, please.
Zerkala, Belarus. In 2020, during the post-election protests in Belarus, Putin supported Lukashenko, including a military format reserve of Rosguardia near the border of our country. Because of this, democracy in Belarus lost. If democracy had won, Russia would not have been able to attack Ukraine from Belarus, deploy nuclear weapons and threaten NATO countries neighboring Belarus. Maybe it's time to change NATO strategy and start supporting peoples in Europe fighting for democracy. And what do you think about the role of Lukashenko in this aggression?
President Lukashenko and Belarus has been a staging ground for the Russian aggression against Ukraine since the very beginning. When Russia amassed troops along the Ukrainian border before the invasion, many of them were deployed in Belarus, and large parts of the invasion actually was launched from Belarus. So Belarus has been complicit to the Russian aggression against Ukraine since the beginning. We strongly believe that all nations have the right to live in freedom, in democracy, and NATO is built on the core values of freedom and democracy, and that also, of course, applies for the people of Belarus.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, good morning. Good morning to all of you. It's good to see you. Welcome to this meeting of NATO defense ministers. Today we will take forward the decisions taken at the Vilnius summit last July to further strengthen our deterrence and defense. With new plans, improved command and control, streamlined logistics and strengthened air and missile defense. We will address our defense industrial capacity. We are ramping up production of much needed weapons and ammunition for Ukraine's security and for ours. All of this requires us to invest more, and we are making good progress. Last year, we saw an unprecedented increase in defense spending across European allies and Canada, and this year, a record number of allies are spending 2% or more on defense. This ends the public part of the meeting. I thank the media for joining us at the top of the meeting.